Well, small business owners have been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic, being forced to close their doors by the government with little help to stay afloat. I want to bring in Arwen Becker, who is a financial advisor and a small business owner herself, to discuss the future of small business in the U.S. amid this pandemic. Hi, Arwen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we've seen small business optimism plunge throughout the pandemic over the last year, and continued restrictions are now slowing the recovery efforts for those owners. How can they adapt at this point?
Well, I think back to what my husband and I went through. I mean, we're small business owner, 21 years that we've owned a retirement planning firm. And I think back to the Great Recession, and that was nearly our undoing. We were not adequately prepared for something like that. And so I think back at that time to the things that we did to really better prepare us for the unknown in the future. So for us, that meant we really had to reduce or eliminate debt. We needed to look at other additional streams of income that we could bring into our practice. We needed to just be really smart, making sure that we had plenty of reserves and that we started paying ourselves first. That was something that I know a lot of small business owners, they keep pouring it back and back into their company, but they end up putting themselves in a position where they don't have adequate reserves or adequate retirement for themselves. So that was great for us because we had time to rebuild and we had a sense of control. That's different now. A lot of small business owners, a lot of restaurants and fitness clubs, especially in the West Coast, we're in the Seattle area, have really struggled because they have lost that one piece that entrepreneurs typically become entrepreneurs to have, and that's control. And when it comes down to a governmental mandate that says they can be open or not be open, it's really hard to be optimistic. I mean, it's not surprising that so many people are suffering, or like my good friend who has had her restaurant is closing next month because she finally got to this point where she just couldn't deal with the uncertainty of, buying perishable goods and then not knowing if next week she was going to get notified that the restaurant had to shut down. So there's a lot of things that people can do now to prepare for the future, but it's been a challenging time, and it continues to be for a lot of people who are in hospitality, and especially women business owners, because they struggle disproportionately anyway, but they're really bearing a lot of the weight for childcare and things of that nature. So there's a lot of different factors at work here.
And Democrats have included a massive minimum wage hike in the stimulus bill that's currently making its way through Congress. How does such a move impact small business owners who are already struggling to keep their business open at this time?
There's a lot of things that it does. It either chooses them to have to increase prices on goods and services, which they may have not wanted to do, or what my husband and I had to do after having 66% of our income cut in 2008, 2009, was you have to start laying people off. But then you have to maybe cut benefits, or you have to reduce people's hours. So just increasing the minimum wage is not going to solve it for so many of the individuals who really need it. They're going to either get laid off, they're going to have less hours, or they're going to have their benefits cut. And, if you live in an area like we do in the Seattle area, where it's much more expensive than, say, Topeka, Kansas, where our son lives, having it at $15 an hour, that's just disproportionate. And so it's not helpful at the ground level. It's really got to be something that is more community by community and is looked at in a different way versus it's just this big blanket change.
You mentioned this briefly, but officials have slow-walked the reopening of schools across the U.S., bowing to pressure from teachers' unions despite the science showing that it is safe to reopen. How does that impact the workforce and those small business owners at this point?
Quite honestly, I think it's good because we've been fortunate. Our kids are in private school, but in the Seattle area, most families are not back on campus. So that affects specifically on women, because we do focus very, very heavily on women. That is a really big burden that they are bearing right now. So a lot of them have left the workforce. A lot of them have taken pay cuts. A lot of them may not even be working and lost their job because they've got to care for kids. So getting them back in school, not only for the mental capacity of parents, but for the kids as well, I think is tremendous and is really going to help a lot of those business owners get their focus back to where it's been, which is on their business.
Arwen Becker, financial advisor and small business owner, joining us to discuss the future of small business amid the pandemic. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.